because I've done a video, but I wanted to share a life update with you all. This technically will be my very first life update, and I'm actually pretty nervous and scared about doing this video because I'm a very private person, and it's not often that I share my personal life publicly. It's not often that I share a lot of things even with people closest to me. So this video is going to be difficult to get through, but I'm gonna try and do it, mainly because I decided to do it mainly because this has been a really emotional year for me. And I just feel like there's just this dark cloud hovering over me. And I feel like if I just get these emotions out and just talk about it, maybe it can help me, and maybe someone else out there is experiencing the same thing, and maybe it could help them too. So before I get into the main topic of this video, I think it's really important for me to give you a background and sort of a timeline of significant things that are important that have happened within the last 10 years of my life, just to kind of bring you up to speed. So I don't think a lot of people know this because like I literally don't talk about it to anyone, like other than super close friends and family. But for the past 10 years I have been the sole caretaker for both of my parents. Both of my parents have neurological disorders. My mother, she has ataxia, which is a neurological disorder that the doctors, they really couldn't explain where she got it from, but it affects your cerebellum, it affects your movement. It's basically a movement disorder. So she suffered from that well over 15 years, and it's kind of stagnant. Well, it was kind of stagnant, so she's kind of been in one place with it. Like, it hasn't significantly changed in the last few years, but she's definitely been wheelchair bound, and she has very limited mobility. And my dad, he actually had Parkinson's, and with the Parkinson's, he had a lot of the side effects that Parkinson's cause. He had dyskinesia, which is I don't know if you all have ever seen someone with dyskinesia, but it's when people kind of movement and they can't control their movements, like they're talking and it's kind of like a little jerk and stuff. So he definitely had that. He had the tremors, but he took medications in it, which kind of controlled it a bit. But you know, with Parkinson's, it's just such an aggressive disease, and over the years he kind of picked up more side effects. He picked up dementia, which is a side effect of Parkinson's. His dementia, it wasn't severe, but he would definitely have times when he was like present and he wasn't present. But I would say it wasn't severe. It was still manageable, but yeah, just with the Parkinson's, it was a lot. He was walking and still doing a lot of things for a while, but then after the years passed, his balance started becoming weaker, and he couldn't really walk. He couldn't walk as good. So first he used the walker, and then he eventually became wheelchair bound too, just like my mother. So basically, the past 10 years, they were both wheelchair bound up until, you know, this year. My mom still is, but yeah, so, and I've been taking care of them just all by myself. No family, no friends, help from no one. Literally been taking care of them all by myself. And it has been incredibly hard to care for two. I said I wasn't gonna cry, especially this early, but yeah, it's been incredibly hard to care for two aging parents, and let alone two parents who were basically handicapped and couldn't do a lot for themselves. So within the 10 years, a lot transpired with my family. And when I say with my family, I mean my immediate family, just mom, dad. I have a sister. She's pretty much estranged, and I don't want to go too much into that, but basically I've had zero help. But it got to a point where my mother, she was home with me. Both of them were home. We all lived together and both of them were home with me. But it got to a point where my mother, I could no longer physically handle her at home. We were calling the fire department like every other week because she was falling, and my dad and I, we couldn't pick her up. My mom is a little heavier, so we definitely couldn't pick her up, and calling the fire department every week, and it was just getting more and more difficult to care for her at home. So I did have to make a decision to put her in an assisted living facility that could kind of give her a 24/7 care, just 24/7 care that she needed. And that worked out. It worked out pretty well. Like she has probably been, in the last 4 or 5 years, she's probably been in about three different assisted living facilities. The one that she's currently in is really good. It has been really good up until this year, actually. I'll get into that later. So another thing I wanted to talk about as far as my decision to put my mother in an assisted living home, I definitely received a lot of backlash and judgment from mostly family. And I just want to say, if you're ever considering putting a loved one in an assisted living home, you have to focus on what's the best thing for them. That's your main concern. You can't worry about what other people think and the judgment, because 9 times out of 10 they aren't doing anything to help you. And that was definitely the situation with my family, like my mom's family and stuff. They weren't doing anything but running their mouths like what you should or shouldn't do, or just a lot of judgment of how I was caring for her and different things. But at the end of the day, they weren't doing shit. They weren't showing up. They weren't coming over to help bathe her or do anything else. So for me, I made the decision. The decision wasn't super hard for me because just physically, I was super worn out just between both of my parents. And then, with my mom, she didn't really have much of a cognitive disorder at that time. My dad did with the dementia. But with my mom, I felt safer putting her in assisted living because she's very smart. My mom is not gonna let anyone take advantage of her, and she knows, like, if she doesn't like something, she's gonna tell you. That's just how my mother is. And so that made me a little more comfortable with putting her somewhere. But I will say, if you're looking to put your loved one somewhere, it definitely takes work. It took us a few tries before we found the right place. But this last place they have been really good, like up until this year, and I'm gonna get into that later. But you just have to do the work. You have to stay consistent. You have to research, and you have to show up and check in on your loved one. Like my dad and I, we were going to see my mom literally every week. I was talking to her every day, so I always knew what was going on. The staff was friendly. She was well cared for. And so like I say, you just have to blow off people and their opinions and your judgment, especially when they're not in your shoes and they're not even offering assistance to help. And just, I was taking care of 2 people, and just think about, 2 handicapped people. There were times when I was taking them to the doctor's appointments, like both of them together in wheelchairs, 2 wheelchairs in my trunk, pushing one in at a time, going back to the car to get the other one. It was a lot. So I definitely putting her in assisted living was definitely a big weight lifted off of me. And I think her too, because she got a lot more one-on-one care that she needed and desired. So that definitely worked out. And my dad, he basically stayed home with me, and I chose to do that because I felt safer with him being home with me. For one thing, he was easier to care for. And then also with him having dementia. Now I would say, if I had a loved one with dementia, and if I had, if I felt like I could take care of them, which I could with my dad for a while, I would definitely keep them home, because that's the part that scares me, when someone can't really express or advocate for themselves. That was my biggest decision for not putting him somewhere, so I kept him home. But yeah, don't let anyone or anything you've heard deter you for something like that. But like I said, you have to do the work. You have to stay consistent. Okay, so I think I've kind of brought you all pretty much up to speed with the history and the timeline of the things I've been doing with the past 10 years of my life, which hasn't, as far as my life, which hasn't been a whole lot, because, you know, I've just really been a vessel just caring for my parents. And I'm really happy that I've been afforded and able to do that. Like, I wouldn't take anything back, even though I've missed out on a lot of my own milestones and just pretty much haven't had a lot of life for the past 10 years. I wouldn't take anything back, because I'm just happy that I've been healthy and able enough to care for my parents, because I probably wouldn't trust them in anyone else's hands. And like I say, with the family dynamic and everything else that's been going on, I just, I wouldn't trust them with anyone else. So I've definitely had some trialing times. Another thing that I don't talk about much is I suffer from depression, very severe case of depression, and I would say that's been for the past 10 years as well, because something significant happened with the estrangement of my sister, and it kind of just internalized over the years. And yeah, that's what I've been dealing with. I've been dealing with depression. So just think, on top of that, caring for two parents, and then I'm depressed, and then, this shitty 2020 year was right around the corner. It's just been a lot. So this probably the last year, it got really bad. While I was caring for both my parents. My mom was still in assisted living, but that was still work too. And then with my dad at home, his dementia kind of got a little worse probably within the last year. And so he was having episodes and stuff, and he was pretty much like a big child, a big kid. And so in a sense, I felt more like the mother to both of my parents, and it was just a lot to take going, seeing the roles reversed and everything. But so with dealing with the depression, and just, I wasn't able to just spend quality time with my friends, or just go to concerts, or do anything that I liked. It was always hard, because I literally had no one to watch them. So I know a lot last year, when I did go to concerts and things, I would leave my dad at my mom's apartment with her, and I felt safe doing that. But like towards the end of the year, the middle of last year, my dad is a veteran, and they actually had a program that I learned about that offered daycare, like adult daycare. And so I looked into that, and he got approved to go to one that was really close to my home. And so I put him in the adult daycare, and it was difficult at first, because Dad, he was the type of person, he didn't like change. Like, he didn't want to go. That was his number one thing. But I was trying to get him more involved, because I needed time to myself. He needed time to himself. He needed to get out. I needed to get out. And I just desperately needed a break. So I would take him to daycare. He would be there about 8 hours. So I would take him early in the morning and pick him up in the afternoon, just like going to school. And he did that maybe about 6 months. It went well, and it went into to this year, 2020. And so now I'm gonna kind of get on the topic of the heavy stuff. All right, so January 2020, Dad has still been going to daycare from January up until March. There had been a few incidents that were kind of concerning to me, and I was going to take him out, but I kept just battling with the decision of finding another daycare, and this one was just so close. It wasn't anything where that was harmful. It was just some minor incidents, and you know, he still hadn't really adjusted to the daycare setting because he just was a homebody and everything. But I needed a break, so he was still going. So I'm gonna fast forward up into March. So probably the last few days that I remember taking him to daycare was probably maybe like the second or third week of March. And I remember at home, he had been complaining to me the last few days. He was complaining about back pain and shoulder pain, but you know, I never thought too much of it because my dad, you know, he was older and he was always doing things that he had no business doing. He was frail and stuff, but he was really strong. Like my dad, he would get on the floor trying to exercise and use dumbbells, and he wasn't supposed to be doing it. He had a pacemaker and stuff, but he was really strong and determined. So, you know, I kind of brushed it off, and you know, when he was talking about the pain, because he only said it like a couple days. It was just like, my back is sore, you know, my shoulder is sore, and I didn't think too much of it. The last day that I took him to daycare, I remember this was right when the news of everything was happening with the virus, with coronavirus. This was right before the shutdown, right before just everything kind of went crazy. So this was probably like the second or third week of March. So the final day that he went to daycare, I remember, you know, I was watching the news and everything, and they were in talks about possibly shutting down the country and everything. So I was like, oh my God, let me go grocery shopping, because me and Dad are probably going to be in the house for a while. Let me just stock up. And so that morning before I dropped him off, I could kind of tell that he probably wasn't feeling too good. But I just had no one to watch him, and I needed to stock up. So I was able to go ahead and get him dressed and everything, and I got him, you know, to daycare. And so that day I just stocked up on everything, all our needs, for probably about 2 weeks, because I just anticipated us being home for a long time. So that afternoon when I picked him up, he just didn't seem like himself. I could tell he wasn't feeling well, and it looked like he might have like thrown up his food or something on his clothes during the day. But at daycare, you know, it's no telling what happened. And yeah, so when I went to pick him up, they wouldn't let us inside. They had to, because it was everything with the virus, and you know, everything was so new and everything, so they had to bring him downstairs. So when they brought him out, you know, I got him in the car. He wasn't talking too much, but you know, when I got him home, he did okay. I asked him how he was feeling, and he was just saying he was okay, and he just wanted to lay down. So I helped him in bed and let him lay down and everything. And I just know, you know, I probably picked him up maybe 4 or 5 o'clock that day, and he had been in bed maybe 3 hours. And so I got him up. I was like, Dad, don't you need to get up and use the bathroom or eat or something? And so I remember getting him up, and I took him to the bathroom, and it was just a struggle. It's like he could almost not bear his own weight to stand up. And even though he had the mobility issue with the Parkinson's and everything, he was still pretty strong. But it was just that specific day, it's like he couldn't bear, it was hard for him to bear his weight to kind of lift himself up. So it was a struggle to get him in his wheelchair into the bathroom. And so I remember, I got him in the bathroom to use the bathroom. You know, he sat there and used it and everything. And then when I was trying to, you know, he was sitting there for a while, and then I noticed he was kind of slumping over, and he wouldn't get up. I was just like, come on, let's get up. And he just wouldn't get up. We have like a little handicap bar. He was just holding on to the bar and everything. And so I was growing, you know, much more concerned now, because he's not lifting his body weight. It's kind of like, you know, what's going on. So I ended up calling an ambulance, and you know, the medics came. They stayed here for a while. They checked his vitals and everything. They helped him like get off the toilet into his wheelchair and everything. And I remember the medic, he was saying it's not so much that he's having trouble lifting his weight, he was resisting, like he didn't want to do it, you know. So they checked out his vitals, and I think they were fine. They were concerned that he might have been dehydrated or something, so they you know, they hooked him up to everything and gave him some fluids. But you know, I was still concerned and everything, so I did choose to go ahead and have him taken to the hospital just to get everything checked out. So we got to the hospital, and once I explained to them everything that had been happening, they decided to admit him since he wasn't being too responsive. His vitals were okay, and I was actually kind of worried and just surprised that they admitted him, because he seemed okay as far as what I could tell, you know. But I don't know if it's something that they were just, it was just procedure or anything, because my dad, you know, he had so many hospital visits because he was either getting up, he would always try to walk, and he know he was supposed to be in his wheelchair, and his balance would be off and he would end up falling. So I had been in the emergency room with him over probably in the last year, probably a handful of times. I know one time he fell, he fractured his finger. Another time he scraped up his knee and stuff. So he was always falling and doing things, but you know, he always came home and they never admitted him. But I don't know if it was just some stuff, you know, if it was because of everything going on, or if they just picked up on something. But yeah, they admitted him into the hospital. So that was like probably, I probably got home maybe like 3-4 a.m. and everything. And then I went back the next morning, and they were still doing tests, so it really wasn't too much. They were just saying they was just trying to figure out what was going on with them at the time. And you gotta excuse me if I'm all over the place, because I'm really trying to remember, because I've kind of blocked a lot of this out of my mind, because I just kept reliving it over and over every day, and it just got to the point where I kind of blocked, you know, some details out. But yeah, I know, you know, the first week, the first few days, he was doing pretty good. You know, I was going up there every day checking on him. With the dementia, he was kind of out of it. So I'm not sure, I don't think he knew or understood a lot that was going on, and it seemed to have gotten a little worse while he was in the hospital. You know, just sometimes with dementia, someone being outside of their home, or just somewhere, a place that they're familiar with, sometimes their condition can just get worse, like when you move them outside of their comfort zone, like him going from being home to in the hospital. You know, it's just a drastic change. So I'm not sure he was totally aware of what was going on around him. But yeah, so the first couple days, everything seemed okay. You know, I went up there, he was eating, I helped him eat some of his food. Another thing, they were concerned, that was the thing, one of the biggest things they were concerned about, his swallowing, which was another side effect. He had dysphagia, which is like, it was a side effect of this Parkinson's. It's where it's where you swallow your food, but I think it goes into the lungs or something. It doesn't go down all the way. And he was aspirating. And so I know over the years that was one of their concerns. They initially wanted him to get a PEG tube. This is way before this, is sometime early last year, they wanted him to get a PEG tube because they were concerned about his swallowing. But we decided to go the modified diet route, where we would just puree his foods and stuff for the most part, and that seemed to work for a little while. But he was still having trouble, so I was considering it up until the last few months of this year, up until this happened. But yeah, so while he was in the hospital, they were concerned about that. They did another GI test and everything, and his swallowing was still bad. So, you know, the first few days, that was the concern. And then maybe day 3 or 4, I remember the doctor calling me, and they were saying he had pneumonia. I was like, oh gosh. But they weren't sure if it was just, you know, a random case of pneumonia or something with his aspiration, like aspiration pneumonia, because that's one of the things with dysphagia. It can, and the swallowing, the aspirating, it can cause aspiration pneumonia if it goes into the lungs. So they weren't sure if it was coming from that or if it was coming from something else. And so maybe, I know, like, let's say day 4, 5, it's like things started to progress really, really fast. And it was just almost shocking to me how fast, I think maybe day 4 or 5, they were saying he had fever. He had a fever, and then the pneumonia was starting to look a little bit worse. So since he was showing symptoms, the doctor called me and said the symptoms were consistent with those of the virus, of the coronavirus. So they were concerned about that. So they isolated him and moved him to the floor, to the COVID-19 floor, because they were concerned about that. But they were still unsure if the pneumonia was from the virus or from his aspiration. So he had been battling that for like the first week. And I know probably the beginning of the second week is when things started to take a drastic change. And it was just really crippling and scary to see, because, he'd been in the hospital so many times. And, he always would come home. That was just my biggest thing. Because, like, when I was home, I was just like, I know I was telling a friend, I'm just nervous. And I'm anxious. I can't wait till they discharge him, with everything going on. And I just kept saying that. And so that second week, things started to really take a downward turn. And so they tested him for the virus. I believe they tested him when he first, like day 1 of his hospital stay. But the lab results, they were so behind, because this is when it first happened, and tests weren't even just as plentiful. It wasn't easy to get tested back then. Remember, this was March when everything first happened. So they tested him, and his results hadn't come back yet. This was the second week, but they started to treat him like the virus, because he was symptomatic now. He had symptoms that were consistent with the virus. So the second week, I would still visit him and everything. I know the last few times he started coughing. He was coughing more. He wasn't talking anymore, because he was doing so much coughing. So I think he was kind of out of it. And I remember when I was home one day and I got a call from the doctor. This is before I went down there, or either after. I don't remember. But he was just saying, I just want to talk to you about his pneumonia. It's getting severely worse. And he was like, I don't think Dad is going to make it. And he was just saying he didn't think he was gonna make it. And my mind just froze, because it's just like, what do you mean? He was just up walking and eating, a few days ago. And now how did we go from, him having pneumonia to he may not make it? And he was just, the doctors, he was just saying, I want you to kind of prepare yourself. And they were asking me like questions, if I was his power of attorney and all of this stuff, and what decisions I would want if something happened. And if we had an advance directive, which I am thankful, we did do all of that years before, any of this transpired. But I did have an advance directive. And, one of the questions the doctor asked me, he said, well, do you want a do not resuscitate order? Or if he has trouble breathing on his own, do you want him to go on a ventilator? And it was just a lot. And, the last time I saw my dad, I could tell he was kind of suffering with it, because he was just coughing a lot and he looked so weak and tired. My sister, Surprisingly, I had been kind of in contact with her, so I had let her know what was going on and everything. So in a sense, I'm glad that she was there for part of it because I wasn't truly alone. But in another sense, after looking back on everything, I don't know, I wish I had made different choices. But anyway, so the doctor, you know, he wanted to know about if I wanted them to resuscitate him, like if his heart stopped. I know my dad, you know, but long before this, my dad, he always said, even with the Parkinson's stuff, I know he was tired. And in his advance directive, he said he didn't want to be kept alive by machines and stuff like that. But, you know, I'm thinking, this is my dad. You know, I want you to give him a chance. I want you to save him. But so I made the decision, a really hard decision. Like if his heart stopped, you know, I did choose to not resuscitate him because that was his wishes. But I initially told them, you know, if he needed help breathing or if he needed to be put on a ventilator, that I did want them to do that because I didn't want him, you know, to suffer. So the last, so I would say this probably went on maybe the last 3 or 4 days of the second week. And I know one of the last times I went to see him, this was another time after the doctor called and was just saying, you need to prepare yourself. Because they were just saying it wasn't looking good and, you know, it could be, they weren't sure. And so one of the last days I went to see him, I remember, you know, I went in his room and he knew I was there, you know, but he was doing a lot of coughing and everything. And so I just talked to him. I was just like, I'm so sorry, Daddy. I was like, I know you're tired and it's okay to be tired, you know. And I said a little prayer with him. And I sang one of his favorite songs to him. And, you know, and I remember after I sang his song, you know, and prayed for him, I was holding his hand, and then I went to grab a chair because when we went in, when I went in the rooms, I had to suit up, I had to put on a gown, PPE, just everything, you know, because of the virus, and you know, and they still weren't sure what his results of whether he had it or not. So I remember being really hot, and so I was like, let me grab this chair, and I just I was gonna let his hand go to grab the chair, and he squeezed my hand, like he squeezed it so hard, like don't let go. And I was just like, it's okay, Daddy. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just gonna sit down. And so then he kind of calmed down. And I remember when I was praying for him, and part of the prayer, I was just asking God. I was just telling God, you know, I was just praying, you know, if this has to happen and if it's your will, to please allow it to be a smooth transition. And you know, I kept telling my dad, I was like, if you're tired, it's okay. And I was just like, your work here is done and you've been so beautiful to me, and it's okay to be tired. And I remember after saying that, he kind of closed his eyes, like he was like forcing them closed, but I think he was just resting and everything. But yeah, so after that day, you know, I left. I didn't stay too long because I hadn't been feeling good after that. So I left and I went home, and I remember I laid down. So this whole time, probably that second week, I myself hadn't been feeling good. Like, and it was really weird. I felt super tired, really weak, like I could just barely walk. And you know, I was just attributing that to stress and just anxiety. But and then I kept feeling really hot, like even when I was at the hospitals and stuff. Like it was one day I felt like I was gonna pass out, like I was really hot. But again, I was just chalking that up to anxiety and just everything going on with Dad. So one of the last few days, I know the doctors, they told us, we want you to make a decision. Because at first I told them that, like, if, you know, I wanted them to to try to resuscitate him. This is before the do not resuscitate thing. I told them I wanted them to, you know, try to save him if something happened. And the doctor was just like, he just kept saying, he was just like, we could break his ribs, you know, and he's so weak, I'm concerned. He was just like, are you sure? So a part of it, I almost felt pressured, so to speak, but I don't know. But one of the things I kind of feel guilt about is making the decision, even though, you know, now I feel like it probably was the best decision, but it's just one of those decisions that nobody should have to make for somebody that they love, and it's just so hard to make it. But yeah, after that, the last few days, I remember one of the days my sister, she went up with me, and you know, I prayed again, and this time with her. And I remember after he squeezed both our hands, and I remember after the prayer, I saw a halo, a little halo rainbow in his hospital room. And you know, I tried to get a picture of it, but the camera wouldn't pick it up. So I kind of realized that it wasn't meant for the camera, it was just meant for me to see that. And it sort of gave me a sense of peace, that he was in good hands and that everything was going to be okay. So I think the next day after that, the hospital, they called us and they were suggesting that we put him in hospice just to make him more comfortable, because he was really uncomfortable and kind of suffering. And so that was a really, really hard decision to put him in hospice, because, you know, anytime you put someone in hospice, it's just for someone who's really, really sick, it's just preparation, you know, just making it easier for them to transition and everything. So the next day, me and my sister went up there, and I signed the paperwork and everything for them to just go ahead and discharge from the hospital to put him in hospice. But so since with the virus and everything, and since they didn't have his results back, he couldn't like come home or go to an outside facility. So he did hospice in the hospital. So he was still in his same room and everything. So Dad, he was in hospice for 2 days, probably one full day, and then maybe 18 hours the next day. And I remember those 2 days, I was feeling so weak and so tired and so sick. And so, you know, I kept calling up there to check on him and everything, and they said he was okay. And they were just, you know, telling me the process of everything and his vitals. But I know I was talking to a friend, I was just like, man, I don't feel good, but I really want to go up there. And I know she was telling me, she was just like, just speaking from experience, you know, no matter how you feel, just make sure you go, because you don't want to regret it. And so I think this was the second day. I was just feeling, that first day I was just feeling too bad, so I didn't go. The second day, it was the second night, or either the first day of hospice that night, I don't remember. But yeah, I told myself, like, I couldn't sleep at all that night. I told myself, I was just like, you know what, no matter how I feel when I wake up, I'm getting up early and I'm going to see Daddy, because, you know, I don't want him, you know, to be alone or to feel alone. And that was my biggest thing. So I remember waking up that morning, like early, maybe 6 or 7. I actually think I woke up with a call, and it was the call from the hospital, and it was maybe around 7:30 or something, and it was hospice. And they told me, they was just like, April, I'm sorry to inform you, but your daddy's passed away. And so it was just, you know, it was a lot to take in, even though, you know, with him being in hospice, you kind of are in preparation for that something's going, that is, you know, that is coming, that is going to happen. But it's still, you know, because everything happened so fast in a 2-week span. Like, it just went from here to here so fast. And so they called me after they told me that. I made a few calls. I called my mom, and then I called my sister. And so she was gonna meet me down at the hospital, and I remember I drove down to the hospital, and I was just in my car, and I just kept telling myself, just like, keep it together, you gotta keep it together, everybody gotta keep it together, you're gonna go see him. So I parked in the parking deck, and you know, I was okay until I got in the elevator. I remember being on the elevator, and it's like everything just hit me, and maybe like three or four other people, they walked in behind me on the elevator, and as soon as the elevator started going up, I just burst out crying, and just like a you know, I was just crying. I couldn't hold it together, and it was just, I know people in the elevator were like, what's going on? And I remember this lady, she like put her hand around my shoulder, and she was just like, are you okay? And you know, I just nodded my head, and I just cried. And so when I got inside the hospital, and then I waited for my sister to come before I saw him, you know, because I didn't, at that time, I wasn't sure I wanted to go in alone. You know, I just didn't want to be alone. And so I waited for her to get there, and we went in there, you know, and we just sat with him for a little while. I sat with him, I brushed his hair, and just sat with him, and just, you know, just to see somebody who's been so strong for so long, you know, just, they couldn't hold on anymore. It was just painful, but I feel like in the moment I had a sense of peace, because I knew he wasn't suffering anymore, and I knew he wouldn't want to be here suffering. So yeah, that was a lot. That day was a lot. So after we saw him and everything, you know, we had to get everything situated with where they would take his body, like to the funeral home and everything. So I got back home, and I was still feeling sick, you know, and I still was ignoring, you know, my body and what was going on with me. So my sister, she came back home with me, and like I said, you know, my sister had been estranged for maybe well over 10 years, and just more recently she's been kind of, you know, talking off and on, but it's still, our relationship still has been pretty estranged. So anyway, she came back home with me, and you know, I was making phone calls and stuff, and just trying to sit with myself, and I was just grieving and crying and stuff. And I remember I had went to the bathroom, and so I had a video monitor in my dad's room, and it's the reason I had that is because with his his dementia, he used to get up in the middle of the night and like roam and go through stuff, and sometimes he'd fall and stuff. So I had a motion detector video camera, you know, to kind of keep an eye on him when he got up and stuff. So anyway, I had still had the camera on in his room and stuff. I remember being in the bathroom, and I had got a notification, a motion notification. So I was just like, why is there motion in his room? So, you know, I looked on the camera, and I saw my sister, and I'm just like, why is she in there? So she was just like looking through his stuff, like looking on top of his dresser, and I don't know what she was looking for. So at first I didn't think anything of it, and I didn't say anything to her, you know, when I came out. And I know one of the other days she was here, it happened a second time. I was upstairs, and I got a motion notice on my phone, and I saw her again in his room, just like she was looking for something. And I was just like, okay. I never said anything, but I was just like, what is she looking for? And I know that the day right after he passed, when we came home, she came home with me, and she was just like trying to press me. She was just like, we need to get all his information. I need to make phone calls. You need to give me, if he has insurance, life insurance, did he have this, that? Come on, so I could go ahead and make the phone calls. I was just like, well, I was just like, you need to relax. You know, this literally just happened like 2 hours ago. We don't have to do all of that in one day. But, you know, let's take time to process. And then, you know, and another part was just like, you know, you don't have the authority to do any of this. I need to handle this because I've been taking care of my parents for the past 10 years alone. Like, you chose to walk away and not be involved. So as difficult as it is right now, that's still not your place to do that. And, you know, I honestly don't think it was sincere or coming from a genuine place of her just trying to you know, find out about his insurances and just everything that he had. But you know, I was being optimistic about it, and I just stayed quiet about it, but I was just like, I'll handle that, you know. And so you know, we were preparing for his funeral, his burial and everything. And I wouldn't wish, you know, someone losing someone in the middle of a pandemic on anyone, because it was just so difficult. I know I had to find my dad just a suit. Well, he had a suit, but it was too big because he had lost so much weight over the years. But I couldn't really find him anything. So we were going to the stores and stuff, but a lot of the stores were closed and stuff because of the virus, and it was just a difficult time. And I remember my dad, before all this, he used to always tell me, he was just like, I need me a suit. I need a good dress suit, you know. And you know, I never got around to getting him one, and so that just kept just being in the back of my mind, like, gosh, you know. But it ended up working out. I found some stuff for him, but I just know during that time, you know, my sister was with me, and it just seemed like she wasn't present. You know, she was texting on her phone the whole time and just not involved. It was almost like she didn't want to be there. But like I said, I don't want to get too much into that because that's a whole other topic, you know. But yeah, so I decided to have a graveside for my dad. One of the biggest things, his family, like his brother and his brother's wife and their kids and stuff, they had just moved to Texas, so they weren't able to come. And then of course during that time with the virus, they couldn't travel. So that's one of the things I really hated, that they couldn't physically be there. But we figured out a way where we could like do it on Zoom or YouTube them in, and we were able to do that. But they were only allowing like 10 people at the service. And you know, with me being not on good terms with my mother's family, and my dad's family was out of town, you know, I really wanted it to be intimate and just me, my mom, my sister and her son, you know. And we had a family friend who were ministers, and they did the service. So everything, it turned out really beautiful and really intimate. And I'm really glad that I got a chance to be with Dad in some of his final moments, because I know with this virus, a lot of people didn't get that chance, you know. They had to do it on FaceTime or just couldn't be in person, you know, with their family member. And I cannot imagine it, you know. I'm just really thankful that if it had to happen, that it happened at a time where they were still allowing me to be there. But I definitely feel guilty, and I try not to beat myself up about it, but just not being there those last 2 days, because I just didn't want him to be alone. You know, nobody should have to transition alone, and part of me just feels like he was alone, even though I feel like the dementia kind of aided him with not being afraid, because you know, he wasn't really totally aware. So I feel like that probably kind of helped. But I am glad I got to be there every day up until those final moments. But I really, you know, I really have some resentment about that. But I try not to beat myself up about it, because, you know, what can you do? What can you do? So before we laid him to rest, we actually had a small wake for him. I didn't put it in the newspaper because I didn't want, you know, we already couldn't have a lot of people there, and I just wanted everything to be really private. And like I say, with the ordeal with me and my mom's side of the family, one of my biggest things is I didn't want them coming up there just disrupting something that should have been really intimate. And I know the wake, I kind of expected it to happen, but it still kind of threw me. So I took my mother to the wake, and when we got there, her whole family was there, and it just made me step back a little bit. I was just like, really, really. But I kept my composure, and was just like, I'm just gonna keep it cool, because I'm here to honor my father. This is not about them. This is not about me. This is about honoring my father, and I'm gonna do it respectfully, and I'm gonna do it well. So I got there, and I was pushing my mom in her wheelchair down the hall, and we were going to go view him. Everything was laid out really beautifully. And I know when I walked into the room to view him, there was a man standing there with a tripod and a video camera, and like taking pictures, and I was just like, what are you doing? I didn't say that out loud, but I asked my mom, I was like, why is he here? My mom, she had hired him, I think it was her friend or something, to take pictures and take family pictures. And in my mind, I'm like, what the fuck is this? This is not a Tyler Perry movie. Like, this is real life. Like, who does that? Who has a tripod and a video camera at a wake? Like, I don't know, I know black families be doing some extra stuff, but that was a little much to me. But I said, I'm not gonna make a big deal out of it. But I know one of my mom's sisters was there, and I haven't been on good terms with her, just for a lot of reasons. But I'm a cordial person, but she approached me, and she was just like trying to press me, asking me details about the funeral. And I told her, I said, it's only a limited amount of people. This is very intimate, and you can't come. I was just like, it's just me and my mom. And she just ignored what I said. It was just like, okay, well, what time? What time do we line up? What time do we get there tomorrow? I'm just like, really? And I remember I needed a breath of fresh air. Like, after seeing the man with the camera there, after seeing her family there, a couple of them didn't even speak to me. Like, one of them was there that has been so nasty to my dad, my mom, myself over the years, and she was there. She didn't even speak to me, and it's just like, how dare you? Like, why would you even come? Why would you come? And then you don't even have the decency to say anything. But I'm kind of glad she didn't, because I don't know how I would have reacted. But at the same time, like, so my aunt, she kept following me, and I was just like, I just need some fresh air. So I remember walking down the hallway, and then I just started crying. And she was just like, your dad wouldn't want you acting like this. And I'm just like, acting like what? Grieving? And you're hounding me about something I already told you no to? And so I just couldn't take it. I remember I just got in the car. I just went and got in my car, and I just stayed in my car. Where my mom, I let my mom just enjoy her family, because that's just something that meant something to her, But that really frustrated me, and I'm sad that, at his wake and stuff, that they had to pull that bullshit. People get really weird when people die. It's like, you haven't been good to this person, or you haven't spoke, or you haven't done this and all this time. Why are you coming here, when they're gone? I would never understand that, and I would never respect it. How do you pay your respects to someone you didn't give a fuck about? Sorry for the language, but that's just how I feel. So, yeah, so aside from that, I really thought that they were going to try to show up at his graveside, but they didn't, and I'm so thankful they didn't, because I don't think it would have went well. But I'm glad that everything happened at the graveside the way it was supposed to, and we had a really beautiful moment. We got to do the funeral on Zoom, and my dad's brother and family in Texas, they got to be there, virtually. So I'm really glad that we were able to do that. A few days before we laid my dad to rest, remember I was telling you I was feeling sick and weak. I could barely walk, and I just kept feeling really hot and everything. So I ended up going to the hospital. Yeah, this is before the funeral. I ended up going to the emergency room, and they took some tests and everything. and they did a chest x-ray, and it turns out I had pneumonia. I was walking around with pneumonia the whole time, like going to the hospital and stuff, and that's probably why I felt so tired, you know, and I just kept ignoring the symptoms. Like my chest was feeling heavy, and I was really hot, and I ended up having fevers. Like I was having fevers and didn't even know it. And so with all that said, we still hadn't got Dad's results back yet, but I was pretty sure at that point that, you know, it probably was the virus that he had. And then once I got to the hospital and found out I had pneumonia, I was pretty sure I probably had it too. But, you know, they didn't test me for it. The doctor, he said the pneumonia actually looked bacterial. So he gave me an antibiotic and just an inhaler and sent me home. So I took that. I think I was on that for maybe like 7 to 10 days or something like that, and it did seem to help. I'm not really sure, so I did seem to feel better after 7 to 10 days, but I was really sick when I was taking it, like throwing up and stuff, like violently throwing up, and I don't know if it was just the antibiotic on my stomach, but yeah, it was a rough time. But whatever I had, if it was the virus, I think it was a very mild case of it, but I'm almost certain that it was. But yeah, so after all that, we laid Dad to rest, and then I finally got over whatever that was I had, and we still never got his results back. I didn't get his results back. I had to request for medical records to the hospital, and I didn't get those back till May, end of April or May, I think. And it was like 200 pages, and I went through all of them, and it did come back that he was positive for the virus. Yeah, so I think those early signs when he was complaining about the back pain and stuff, that those were just early signs of it. And later we found out that the daycare he was attending had an outbreak there. So I'm 100% sure that's where he picked it up from, and then I probably got it. Because my dad didn't go anywhere. Neither one of us went anywhere. You know, the only place I went was the grocery store. Dad never left the house unless it was doctor's appointments and to daycare. So I'm almost 100% sure that's where he got it from. But, you know, it just makes me really sad, you know, that he had been through so much. He was so strong. Parkinson's, you know, the dementia. Then he had the episode when he had to get the pacemaker. And then it's just like, really, God, you know, this is what's gonna take him from me, you know. But his body was just so weak, his immune system, he couldn't fight it. But yeah, I know my dad, I know he's in a better place, and I find comfort in that. I find comfort in the fact that he's no longer suffering, you know. And I know, you know, I know God's got him. I know his angels have him, and I know he's always gonna be watching over me. So yeah, let's just fast forward to what's going on now. Well, before I get to that, I wanted to touch on the depression stuff. Like I've still been really depressed. Like I say, the dark cloud, and just now it's just the fact of facing the world without him, you know. And now I feel super alone because, you know, he was my sidekick. You know, we lived together, and it's just like I feel empty. And I feel alone, even though, you know, my mom is still here. My mom and I, we aren't as close. Our relationship isn't as close as the relationship I had with my dad. I was a daddy's girl through and through. I still am a daddy's girl, you know. So, yeah, but so an update on my mother. My mother, and I'm sorry this video is turning into a movie, but yeah, my mother, she you know, she's been in the assisted living, and let's see, the end of June, I know they had called me a couple times concerned about her because she had been falling more than usual. And so one of the times he ended up taking her to the emergency room, and so I got a call from the doctor at the hospital, and he told me you know, just the irony of everything. He told me, he says, April, I'm really concerned. He says, this is coronavirus. And I'm like, excuse me? Is what? You know, and so the Department of Health and everything, they called me, and so they think that she probably picked it up from an employee or somewhere in her assisted living. And those assisted living places are hot spots for viruses and breakouts. And I promise, you know, if I had known that and just not have been ignorant to the fact of that, I would have pulled both of them out of there. I really would have, no matter how hard it would have been, you know, for me at home with them, because, you know, nothing is worth not having them, you know. So the doctor says it's coronavirus. I'm just like, wow. You know, it's only been 3 months since I lost my dad, and now you're telling me my mother has it. And you know, my mother already has a neurological disorder. She has diabetes, you know, she has other ailments, and it's just like this now. So right now my mother, she went into the hospital maybe June 24th, and what is today? Today is this is August, what, the 2nd or 3rd, and my mom is still in the hospital. So the first 2 weeks she was in the hospital, it wasn't looking good for her, and it just all felt so reminiscent of the same thing my dad went through. The doctor called me. I remember I was in Publix. I was at the grocery store one day. I was headed to my car. He called me. I got in the car, and he was giving me the same speech. He said, April, I'm really worried about your mom. You know, it's not looking good. You know, her pneumonia has progressed in her breathing. We're really concerned about her lungs and her breathing and everything. And he was asking me the same questions about the advance directive and the do not resuscitate order and all of that stuff. And I'm just like, not again. Not again. And I kept saying to myself, I say, I know God, you know, I'm a believer in a higher power, and I'm not overly religious, but I'm definitely spiritual, and I'm a believer in a higher power. And I just kept saying to myself, I know God can't be this cruel, or the higher power can't be this cruel. I just lost my dad, and now you're telling me that my mom may not make it. And you know, that was just a lot. So I was just in the grocery store parking lot just crying, you know, to the doctor. And I just told him, I was just like, please, I just lost my father to the same thing. I was just like, this can't be real. So, you know, the doctor just kept apologizing, but, you know, and they just wanted me to make some decisions. But fast forward till today, mom is doing okay. She's still in the hospital. She's been in the hospital over a month. She's really weak. She's been in the ICU and out of ICU a few times because her vitals and her breathing keeps going in. She's technically over the virus. They tested her maybe about 3 more times, and so she's negative for the virus. So she's technically over the virus part, but it's just now she's battling with the side effects. So they are just working on getting her strong enough to discharge, you know, and strong enough, because once they discharge her, she's going to have to go to a rehab facility, and then I'm going to have to find another place for her to go, which is really, really scary, you know, putting her in a rehab facility. And it's just like, I really hope that these people are really careful, you know, with this virus, because I don't need her getting any sicker, you know. And it's just a lot. But yeah, that's currently what's going on with me. I know this video has been super long, but like I said in the beginning, I just felt like I just have this dark cloud just following me, and I felt like talking about it would kind of help me, and if not me, maybe help someone else that may have been going through something similar. So I actually do kind of feel just a little bit of weight lifted off of me just from sitting here talking about it. But all I can do, you know, I'm just staying hopeful and prayerful that my mom will survive this, and that she will, you know, come back kicking and swinging and being her same little feisty, annoying self, you know, because that's just too much. It's just too much, and I'm not sure. I don't even want to think about it, you know. It's just too much in a short time span. But you know, I have some really some really beautiful friends who have been getting me through this. Like, they're seriously the only thing helping me survive right now, because I feel, you know, so alone. But they are a reminder to me that I'm not alone. And I just want to give a reminder to you all watching, or somebody else who may be battling something similar or just anything tragic, that you are not alone. You know, no matter how hard or how dark life seems, there's always somebody that cares about you. And you are not alone. And just, you know, to talk to somebody, talk it out. I've been trying to go to therapy for a long time, even before all of this happened, for this year. Last year, you know, a couple things happened where I wasn't able to start that process, but that's one of my biggest goals, probably for, I need to do it right now, but probably won't even happen to next year, hopefully. But because, you know, I've been feeling like a burden, you know, venting to friends and stuff, and I know we all going through it. This year has been tragic and hard for everyone, so that's another reason why I felt like it was good just to get it all out publicly and in this video, because I don't want to drain the people closest to me, my friends and everything, with my depression or just, you know, my negative thoughts. So you know, so August to me is all about intention and positivity, and I'm gonna step into this month and continue stepping into this month with just faith and believing that things will and do get better, and that my mom will come out of this and healthy and just can still have a great quality of life. And yeah, so yeah, if you've been watching this, thank you for sitting with me all this time. I know this turned into something seriously long, and I know this was probably all over the place, but yeah, thank you for kicking it with me. I'm gonna try to do some more updates, some more life updates, and not be so antisocial. But yeah, and one last thing I want to talk about, and it's for anyone who is dealing with grief. I have never dealt with grief before in this capacity. I have never lost anyone this close to me, so navigating this has been something incredibly painful and difficult. But I just want to remind you that grief is not linear. It doesn't look the same for everyone. Some days you'll feel happy, some days you'll feel sad, some days you'll feel angry, and it's all okay. You have to recognize it for what it is. You're allowed to feel every single feeling, and I just want you to remember to embrace that. I remember it was a day, you know, I had just been feeling sad back to day, reliving the same day over and over right after Dad passed. And I remember one day I just woke up and I was just feeling different. Like, I felt like a weight had lifted off of me, and I was just joking with friends that day, and I actually felt happy. Then towards the end of the day, you know, I started feeling weird, because I said to myself, why are you happy? Why do you feel happy? You just went through one of the most painful moments of your life. You just lost the most important person to you. Why are you happy right now? And I remember talking to a friend about that, and she told me, she was just like, that's just a part of grief. It's just a part of grief. And it's okay if you have days where you feel happy. Like, I felt like something was wrong with me. I was like, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me, because I'm supposed to be sad today. I'm supposed to still be feeling sad. But my friend, she told me, she was just like, that's a part of grief, and you're not dishonoring your father, you're not dishonoring your loved ones if you have a day where you feel a little better, or if you have a day where you're angry or sad or can't get out of bed, you know, or just want to tear something up. You're not dishonoring your loved one, and it's all okay, and it's okay to feel those things. And yeah, you just have to, it's just a reminder to yourself that grief is messy. You know, it's not tidy, it's messy. That's the only way I can describe it. Every day is different. You're gonna have some awful days, and you're gonna have some fairly good ones. So that's just one thing I wanted to say to anyone who may be watching, who may be going through the same thing, that for me, I know, you know, my hope is that it gets better. I'm still not in the it's better phase, or it's getting better, or I feel better phase. I probably cry every day still. 4 months later, you know, I cry every day, you know, because I miss him. And, you know, I'm still in the same house. You know, everything is still the same. His room, I can't even go in his room, you know, without feeling him, you know, feeling his presence. So it's just, you have to take it day by day. It's definitely a process. It's a long process, but I am a believer, and I really believe that it's a process that we all will get through. So yeah, just remember that anyone who's going through grief, just remember that it's okay to feel. It's okay to feel whatever you feel, and don't let nobody tell you you shouldn't be acting like this, or why are you crying? Why are you still doing this? Don't let nobody tell you that, you know. But also, you don't want to, if you see yourself getting in a pattern of just, you know, not feeling good, or just dwelling in the sadness, then you do need to kind of pick yourself up, because that's what I've had to do, because there have been so many days that I just lay in the bed, and there are days where I just don't even want to open my eyes, you know, and I just make myself, you know, I just make myself, because I know I have to. And I know for me and anyone else dealing with this, we have to remember that our loved ones, they wouldn't want us being sad about this forever, you know, they wouldn't want us moping around. So, you know, and just remember, you getting through this is also honoring your loved one. They would want to see you. They would want to see you progress. And that's one of the good memories I have about my dad. He would always tell me, he would joke, he would say, well, I don't think he was joking, he would say, you need to leave me alone, you know, stop worrying about me. Even when he was sick and he couldn't take care of himself, he would just say, just go, stop worrying about me, you need to go live your life. So he always wanted me to find happiness in my life, and that is something that I am set on doing, and I'm going to fulfill. I am going to fulfill that for my daddy, you know. I'm going to honor him and his wishes, and I'm just going to live a good life and find my own sense of happiness. And I hope you all do too. All right, thank you all. Thank you all for watching and sticking out with me.